All right, so I'm gonna record this and we will have it for posterity. So from this point forward, I'd like to ask everybody to please swear as much as possible. Please make sure that you wear inappropriate clothing, cuss, and do whatever else is thoroughly inappropriate for public TV. We're on closed circuit TV, so have at it. And,
That's easy stuff.
yeah, exactly. Deb, lead the way. All right, so again, there should be some individuals who are joining us. I'd like to thank everybody as we near the holiday season for taking the time to be on the call tonight. I appreciate having Christine Ellsworth join us from DEC, and I'll be introducing her in a moment. I wanted to give you just a couple of other quick updates. Hildegard, thank you for joining us again. I appreciate that you've, since expressing interest, you or Tom have been able to make every meeting. And I want to share with individuals that we do have two other couples that I have since met who have purchased homes in Newcomb and are looking at getting involved in community activities. The first is a young woman and her boyfriend. Her name is Annabelle and his name is Louis. They work in human rights nationally and internationally since COVID. They've spent more of their effort obviously working from home. They're based in Brooklyn, but they were interested. Annabelle's mother had a friend who had a place in Goodnoe. She'd never been here before. They spent the summer here, fell in love, and Annabelle wound up buying a house in Newcomb. So she and her husband are very interested, she and her boyfriend are very interested in joining our activities, and I look forward to them being involved in the comprehensive plan. The other couple that I met is Donna Draper's son. And I think, pretty sure his name is Mike, and Corinne, his wife. They're also very interested in being involved. They just purchased a home here. They're probably going to be more weekend, but they are hoping that they might be able to transition to Newcomb full time, at least in phases over the next couple of years. Annabelle and Lou are looking at moving here more quickly. So anyway, so we have new energy, new ideas, and new people who are excited to join us and follow Hildegard's lead. So it's an interesting period of growth for us, and I'm excited about that. So I wanted to share that, and then also want to let you know that tonight's meeting, after Christine is finished, we will obviously there'll be a presentation as well as Q&A, and then we'll move into some discussion before picking next dates and future topics for discussion. And our overarching goal, we can go over our timelines in the second half of the meeting. All right. Any questions on logistics before we get going? All right. So the overall plan for Christine is that we'll have about a 30-minute presentation, or however long that goes. And then after the presentation, we'll open that up for Q&A. All right. Cool. So I'm really excited to introduce Christine. She's someone who I didn't know that I knew until we were on a compost related Zoom call earlier this year. And Christine shared that she actually is a graduate of ESF and had been to the Newcomb campus on some of her in her junior and senior year, perhaps actually, I think even going back, did you say to your freshman year? Yeah, so so is not only familiar with Newcomb, but is familiar with the Newcomb campus. But she currently is an assistant environmental engineer in DEC's Division of Materials Management. And I think that's, if I got that title wrong, I apologize. But what's that?
That was correct.
Right on. But she's a graduate of the college's Environmental Resource Engineering program. And that's the group, for those of you that I've mentioned this to before, that's the program of study that's going to be working on doing a feasibility study for the town around a municipal composting project. So one, it's exciting to have an ESF graduate at DEC, but also working in this field. And it's a great connection back to the group that we're working with now as well. So thank you, and you should be ready to go.
Okay, let me share my screen here. So yeah, thank you all for having me. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. So yeah, just generally speaking, looking to just talk about the composting industry in New York State, some of the opportunities, a little bit of where we're at and where we're looking to go. So as you mentioned, I work for DEC. I'm in the central office of DEC, which is in Albany, and I work for the organics reduction and recycling section. And basically the whole purpose of our section, that's a picture of us right there, is we are looking to keep organic materials, so that can be food waste, yard waste, biosolids, food processing waste, manure, all sorts of stuff out of disposal, so from landfills and incinerators, and try to get it to beneficial uses. So traditionally, the section has regulated what is considered organics recycling facilities. So those are the composting facilities, anaerobic digesters, and other technologies. Some of the other stuff we do is we advocate for legislation that's going to keep organics out of landfills. And for us, most recently, that's been the New York State Food Donation and Food Scraps Recycling Law, which I'll get into later. We also help develop funding programs for municipalities to support these types of programs. And then we also do outreach and education events like this. There's the New York State Organic Summit, which I can talk a little bit about later as well, K through 12 schools. Really anyone we can get in front of to talk about composting, and all the good work that can be done. So I'm just gonna switch it over to this really quick. So let me do this so I can share computer sound. This is just a short video to kind of set you up for start thinking about food waste and everything that goes into it.
Can we get strawberries? Okay.
So that was a ad campaign that NRDC ran, which is Natural Resources Defense Council. And the reason I'm bringing up wasted food is because this is really the next wave for composting. We have a lot of yard waste composting facilities in the state, but food waste is really the future, and it's been a really hot topic in the past couple of years. So that video was really just to kind of get you into the mindset of everything that goes into the food that we put onto our plate, and what happens to it when we decide that we don't want to eat it. So where is food waste coming from? It's not coming from any one place particularly. It's coming from all over the place: homes, restaurants, grocery stores, retail establishments, venues, universities, correctional facilities. It's coming from all over the place. And so it's not only coming through the end, it's also coming through every single phase of the food system. So that includes farming based on the cosmetic standards that farmers have to meet, packing, productions, processing, distribution. So it's coming through every single phase of the food system. So right now we have a dominantly linear system for a lot of our waste in the US, and that is that our food scraps are going to landfill. We're quite honestly, they're not really doing much for us there. And the reason why it's bad that they go to landfills is when they go into landfills, things break down in conditions where there's no oxygen. So that means that it produces methane. And methane, as we know, is a very potent greenhouse gas. So food waste is the one item, that organic material, that we can really take out of our waste systems and really put to better use and make compost and other products. So if we're not doing a linear system, we're really promoting circular systems. So these are systems where everything that we put into it ends up going back into the system. So for example, you grow your food goes to the grocery store, or maybe it goes to a school or a restaurant. Food that can't be used is donated, and that is still perfectly edible food. And any food that's no longer good, or maybe the food scraps, like the peels of vegetables or something like that, can go to a composting facility where it'll make compost and then go back to a farm or a garden, to build our soils and grow more food. And so the EPA also, this is a model that they believe in, and they have created the food recovery hierarchy that we support at DEC, and basically just shows very similarly to recycling. It's reduction, reuse, recycling. So for food, it's let's just reduce how much food we even need to begin with. The next is feeding it to people, feeding it to animals, and then getting into our more industrial uses of composting, anaerobic digestion, and landfill is the last option only. So there's more than one reason, sorry, I'm just gonna go to my video screen there. There's more than one reason that removing food from landfills is good for the environment. Like I mentioned, it's the methane. But once again, there's plenty of food that is going into landfills that can be diverted to people who are hungry in the state. 1 in 7 New Yorkers has trouble with food insecurity. I also mentioned you can go to animals. It saves resources. You saw the resources in that video that goes into transporting the food that's onto our plates. You know, we can, as I mentioned, we can always recycle it, return it into nutrients, and give it back to the soil. So going back to the circular system, you know, if we're not shooting it to landfill, where exactly is it going? And so these are a lot of activities that DEC gets involved in: food donation, animal feed, anaerobic digestion, composting, and land application. Animal feed to land application are things that DEC regulates itself. And food donation is something that we get into, but we work with Department of Health and Department of Agriculture when we're doing that. And for the purpose of this presentation, we're just going to focus on the composting bit. So what exactly is composting? It's basically a controlled decomposition of organic matter. And I just kind of showed some pictures to show the process. You start with your food, you pretty much work it into piles with yard waste or wood chips. You get your compost, and then you can put it back into your farmland or your garden. And so what does composting in New York State look like? So this is a map of all of the composting facilities we have across the state. We typically regulate them based on the type of material they are composting. So this map shows those that are composting food scraps, those that are composting yard waste, biosolids, etc. And as I mentioned, DEC does manage composting regulations. And we have right now, we have about 50 facilities that are accepting food scraps. And those are just the ones that are regulated by DEC. I'll get into our regulations, but we have levels at which you can be exempt. And I know that there's some of those operations going on in the North Country right now. And that basically just means that you don't have to share with the DEC what you're doing because it's exempt. And composting is really happening at every single level and is growing at every single level. And what I mean by that is that more people are doing it in their homes, in their backyards, or maybe inside with vermicomposting bins. More people are getting involved with their community gardens and doing small scales, or just doing community smaller sites. And then you have your big players in the game that are doing, you know, bigger composting facilities that are handling waste from large grocery stores. But there's pretty much every single size in the game right now. So as I mentioned, we regulate composting facilities, and that falls under our Part 360 solid waste regulations. And so composting falls within 361-3. These details aren't really important. And the point of this slide is really just to show that there are multiple ways that you can get involved in the composting. So you don't have to think of it as this large facility. You can really start at whichever size you would like. And we recently updated our regulations to have this less than 1,000 pounds or less than 1 cubic yard per week to, you know, help out our smaller community size composting facilities so that they don't have to worry about, you know, reporting to DEC or having inspections by DEC. You know, it's really a small size. And then once it gets a little bit bigger, DEC gets involved and make sure that, you know, everything's happening correctly. And I'll share this PowerPoint afterwards if you guys like, and I had some hyperlinks in there so you can click through them. So some things that kind of complement our composting facilities across the state are food scraps drop-off spots. And 3 years ago, this map would have been basically bare. And today we have a number of food scraps drop-off spots across the state. And basically these are locations where residents can go to, let's say, a public works garage, or a store, or maybe a farmer's market, and there is a food scraps collection bin set up there, and they can drop their food scraps off there, and then either the local municipality will recycle it, or there's a local nonprofit or a private business that will collect the food scraps from that drop-off spot. And it really just is a spot to bring the community together, especially when it's at a farmer's market. There's loads of people there already. They're coming to buy produce, and they can also drop off their own food scraps, and more conversation happens around it. And the ones you'll see up in the north here, those are mostly Blue Line Compost, I believe. They have a bin swap out program where residents can drop off their buckets of food scraps at a couple different businesses around town. Oh, some of the other businesses that have popped up are residential food scrap collection services. And so these are private businesses that haul food scraps from people's houses. So I do it myself here in Albany. I fill my bin up and then I put it out on the curb every Tuesday, and a company comes by and picks up the food scraps and I get a new bin. So once again, this is a map 3 years ago that would have been pretty bare. And over the past 3 years, we've had a lot of small haulers just pop up looking to do this in their local communities. So looking into the future, very much how recycling was 25, 30 years ago, that is the new wave for organics. The organics industry is very much where recycling was that amount of time ago. You know, we're kind of just in the beginning. There's some leaders in the field, some people are just hopping on, but this is something that isn't going away and something that the state is going to be pushing, you know, through all of the communities, and we're really here to assist you in any way that we can. So recently, the New York State Food Donation and Food Scraps Recycling Law was passed, which I'll get into in greater depth. We're also revising the New York State Solid Waste Management Plan, which is a plan that basically guides state initiatives over the next 10 years. And this is something that I have contributed to myself and our section has. So there's going to be new, I guess, recommendations and goals for what is going to be happening with composting and food scraps specifically over the next 10 years. You guys also might have heard of the recent Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. This is another thing that's going to compile a lot of recommendations and goals to address climate change in the state. And one of the advisory panels is a waste advisory panel. So once again, this is a spot where people in my section and other stakeholders in the industry are going to be pushing for more recommendations in regards to organic recycling and in communities across the state. So as I mentioned, the Food Donation and Food Scraps Recycling Law, this was passed in 2019. My section has been tasked with implementing this law. And it basically states that effective January 1st of 2022, businesses that generate more than 2 tons of wasted food per week or more must donate excess edible food to the maximum extent practical. And once they do that, they have to recycle all remaining food scraps if they're within 25 miles of a food scraps recycler. So if you're interested, I'm going to kind of breeze over this law just because there's a lot of details to it. But if you are interested in going more in depth, we did a webinar on September 16th, and you can view the whole recording on the website and link there. We also have a listserv. So if you'd like to receive announcements on the law as more webinars are coming up or as more resources are available, there's a link there as well. So you might be wondering what exactly are these types of businesses. So like I said, they have to generate more than 2 tons. And these can include all sorts of businesses. So colleges, restaurants, grocery stores, hotels, pretty much any business you kind of think of that might generate more than 2 tons. And there are some exclusions, and those include hospitals, nursing homes, adult care facilities, K-12 schools, New York City, which has its own local law, and farms. And then Delaware County has its own interesting waste processing facilities, so they are also exempt. The K-12 schools, hospitals, nursing homes, adult care facilities, that was not something that DEC decided. That was decided through legislation. So even though they are exempt, we'll still be providing outreach to all those entities. So to kind of figure out who these are, we're using various metrics that kind of help us equate what 2 tons might look like. So for example, a food retail store, they have to have at least 69 employees, which kind of equates to 2 tons per week. There's different conversion factors that we use there. But this is a list of metrics that we'll be releasing, as well as a list of all the businesses that have to comply. But these metrics kind of help us guide which businesses will have to comply with the law. And this was, while it's not near you guys or specific to you guys, I just wanted to let you know that these types of laws can also happen at the local level. Ulster County passed the Food Waste Prevention and Recovery Act, I believe last year. And so that is actually going to start this January 1st. And it's very similar to the state law, but actually is more stringent in that it goes from 2 tons per week to 1 ton per week, all the way down to a half ton per week, and also addresses the healthcare sector. So as I mentioned, the law kind of gets into the food donation bit. My section, we are not the experts on food donation. We know that, so we'll be working with New York State Department of Health and New York State Department of Agriculture as we work to implement this law. So going into some of the timeline, the regulations will be available this winter and it will be open for public comment period. We'll be hosting a webinar series from May through July on various things. June is really the deadline for a lot of the resources that we're going to have to be publishing, which I have a slide on later on. And businesses can also receive a waiver to get out of this law based on if it's a financial hardship, if they aren't able to do so because they don't have a hauler or a food scraps recycler isn't in the area. And I think there's like 3 others. And then like I mentioned, will become effective January 1st. So the webinar series, which anyone is welcome to attend any of these, we'll be giving an update on the food donation and food scraps recycling law. And then in April, while DEC won't be hosting this specifically, we'll be part of the New York State Organic Summit, which which is what Paul had attended earlier this year in March. We did a virtual summit. So this summit will be happening again in April. And it really just brings together various stakeholders in New York State who are interested in composting and furthering the industry in the state. And we just talk about all sorts of things. We really encourage people to talk together, share resources and knowledge with each other. In June, we'll have a webinar specifically for the businesses that have to comply with the law. And then July, we'll have a webinar just kind of going over how we can increase recycling capacity in the state, because that is definitely needed. So June 1st of 2021, we'll be publishing the list of businesses that have to comply with the law. Some will have to donate, some will have to donate and recycle. We'll also be coming out with the best management practices and then other various forms that businesses will have to submit to us. To get into some of the funding stuff that DEC provides, we've been lucky enough to have funding provided to us the past couple of years that have allowed us to make grant programs for municipalities to develop composting facilities or composting program, whether that be outreach and education or maybe outreach and education on reducing wasted food. So right now we're working on developing a $500,000 grant program for municipalities. Hopefully we can release more information on that soon. But otherwise, DEC does have annual funding sources that you can take advantage of. And that's through the MWRR program, which is Municipal Waste Reduction and Recycling. And so one of them is the Grants for Recycling Coordination and Education Project. This has always traditionally been for recycling coordinators, but that can actually include outreach and education for organics, whether that be home composting or wasted food reduction at home. And they accept applications August through October annually. That was a little delayed this year because of COVID. The other one is the Grants for Wasted Reduction Prevention Project, and that is more for capital and equipment. Those are accepted on a rolling basis, and there usually is a waiting list. And then the last one is Climate Smart Communities. That is a program that has a couple different parts to it, but one of them is their grant program. And we've been lucky enough that they have highlighted programs that emphasize on composting the past couple of years, which has been really great to see. And I think shows that, you know, altogether composting is something that is growing in the state. It's not going away, and it's only going to get further support as we move forward. And another available funding source, if you have any businesses in your area that produce food waste, or maybe you have businesses that are composting or hauling food scraps, they're eligible for this grant program for New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. And I included the link if anyone would like more information on that. So preparing for 2022 and beyond, it's important to discuss what role that local entities can play in relation to the law, but just also in getting programs going in their own communities. So as far as the law goes, DEC will be, I guess, is required to develop wasted food minimization outreach and education that local governments can use. We'll also be revising our home composting guide. And these are two things that a lot of municipalities across the state tend to provide outreach and education on to their residents, just because they're good ways to get them thinking about the food that they're throwing out. A lot of municipalities, as I mentioned before, have started getting into food scraps recycling programs, specifically the food scraps drop-off programs, because it allows them to start with a small program and kind of build up and offer it into more places across their municipalities. We also really encourage municipalities, if they compost their yard waste, to think about accepting food scraps. Some municipalities have built resource hubs highlighting food scraps recycling opportunities in the community. It's also a place where they can house workshops that they host on an annual basis. Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency is a really awesome resource. They do a lot of work there. They host a lot of workshops. They have a very strong outreach and education program going on. And another thing we like to see local entities do is honestly just facilitate conversations between stakeholders. Working out of Albany, we try to get involved in the local conversations, but honestly, the local governments are where those local conversations can happen best. They know who the local players are, they talk to each other a lot, and that's really how you get that information exchange and get the ideas going. So there's a number of ways that you can join the conversation. The recycling industry is very welcoming to new ideas, new people coming in. A lot of people like to talk about waste once they get going on it. In New York State, we have the New York State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, which is otherwise known as NYSAR 3. Maybe you've heard of it. And so NYSAR focuses on the larger recycling realm, but also focuses on organics, and specifically it has an organics council. And through the Organics Council, that's how we plan the New York State Organic Summit. So it's a really great group of people that come together on a monthly basis through the council and just talk about updates, problems they're having, questions they have, updates they have. And then we also develop stuff for Compost Awareness Week that we celebrate every year. There's also the United States Composting Council. I'm a part of that through the USCC, I did the acronym wrong, USCC Young Professionals Group. Once again, it's just a great place to kind of connect with people in other areas, learn what they're doing. They host compost operations training courses across the US. We're hoping to bring one back to New York State in the near future. I had attended one, which is what this picture is from, that was down in Cobleskill, and it was a week-long training. And it's just a chance to teach new operators, veteran operators, just a chance to get them all in the room and hopefully teach them something new. And it covers a lot, honestly, in 5 days. BioCycle Connect is a really great resource. It's a free virtual newsletter that comes out, I believe, on a weekly basis. But they do a lot of really great articles in there, and I've learned a lot just reading through them. And then through DEC, we have our solid waste and recycling newsletter that is through DEC Delivers, and that goes out on a weekly basis as well. So that is most of what I had. I wanted to make sure that we left time for discussions, but if you want to follow up with me, please feel free. And if you have specific questions about the law, I have that there, as well as if you have questions about the organics management, we have the 2 different emails. So that's what I had, because I wanted to leave a lot for discussion. So I'm more than willing to answer any questions you might have.
So what is the agenda?
Deb, just hang on 1 second, please, if you all would.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, first of all, I want to say, Christine, thank you very much. There's a lot of information here. As Christine said, she's already shared the presentation with me. I have that available. I will post it on our website, as well as the presentation after tonight. So I want to start by making sure everyone's aware. Again, this is being recorded. I'll host it on the website. I'll host the PowerPoint on the website. So we will have access to all of this information going forward, especially the links to all the resources that Christine just reviewed in those last 2 or 3 slides. It's great stuff. So with that, and again, Christine, thank you for your time. Debbie, you're first, and then Wes, I have you second.
How and why would a municipality want to be a hub?
A hub for composting.
For collection.
Yeah, so I would say a big part of that is honestly community building. A lot of people, I know New York City is not similar, but I'm gonna reference it. And that New York City has built a really phenomenal food scraps drop-off program, and people have come to rely on it. They go there, they meet other people, they talk about composting, they talk about ways that they can reduce food waste in their own homes. And it just kind of starts the conversation. So the idea of food scraps drop-off spots can really be applied anywhere. So one I would say is the community development aspect. The other I would say is honestly landfill space, in that garbage moves all over the place. It does not stay in New York State, it goes into other states. And quite frankly, we are not looking to expand landfill capacity in New York State. So if our landfills fill up, that means that the garbage is going to have to go even further, and it's going to cost a lot more money the further it has to go. So food scraps and really any organic materials that are being sent to landfills is a very easy piece that you can pull out and make into a product that you can then put back into your own land and build up your own soils. So for me, I guess those would be the two things that come to the top of my head.
And I'd like to add to that, from the perspective of Newcomb, there's a number of reasons in addition to what Christine is talking about, why this is something that we should look at. First and foremost, on an environmental level, reducing waste across the board is powerful. And that's something that we should consider from I think from an environmental perspective and from a moral perspective. Also from a fiscal perspective, it represents, if we took out organic food waste, generally is considered to be about 40% of your solid waste stream on average. If we look at what we're spending for solid waste removal out of the town of Newcomb and take 40% of that, we're talking about close to $10,000 that we can save. So when we look at other fiscal priorities in a time and a place where every dollar can be purposed 3 or 4 different times, and we have to make difficult decisions about what we do with our money, if we're able to save $10,000, that's $10,000 that can do something else. On top of that, if we are using, not only if we're removing that waste and saving that money, but we can convert that waste into another resource, either that saves us additional money because we're not buying topsoil and trucking it up here from out of town, or we're able to sell that compost to other individuals who might want it for landscaping, for personal use. I mean, obviously for community members, we probably would distribute it for free, but we're gonna explore different business models. But if you think about all the landscaping and all of the yard work that happens throughout Newcomb, throughout Central Adirondacks, all of that topsoil and compost is being trucked in from outside the park. If we are a net producer of organic soil improvement material that we can sell, that's another revenue stream. So not only are we saving money, but we may actually be making money. So on moral and ethical grounds, I think it makes sense to compost, and I believe that we can accomplish this in Newcomb. From a waste management perspective, we can improve what we're doing. From a fiscal perspective, we can improve what we're doing. We can look at it as a potential revenue stream, and we can look at it as potential job creation. And if you bundle all of that together, when you saw that map that Christine showed you earlier, all the blue dots for drop off, all the green dots for people who are doing hauling, it's all on the north side of the park. And there's nothing from the north side of the park south down to Albany or Saratoga. So we can also be, again, in what differentiates Newcomb for other towns in the park, what puts Newcomb on the map, this can put Newcomb on the map. So
I absolutely agree. And yeah, tying in the local finances of, hauling stuff out of the park, I assume is very expensive. And yeah, organics is really the heaviest part of your solid waste that you're taking out. So if you can take that out and recycle it locally, you're going to save yourself a lot of money.
So Wes, you had your hand up. Debbie, I saw. Did you want to do a follow-up question, Debbie, or do you want to go on to something new?
That was exactly my backup to what the question I asked was, that I know other municipalities they sell the compost. It's an open market. It's a great commodity. And up here, we certainly need it. We have very little topsoil up here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know some places also tie into waste treatment plants. Now, that's not something we have a lot of around here, but I know that other places do also sell the sludge.
Yep, that's another aspect that we regulate, is the biosolids composting. So yeah, you can compost the biosolids, or you can land apply them onto farmer fields.
Yeah. All right, Wes.
I'd like to start out with Christine. That was just an excellent presentation, and not only the content of the presentation, but the delivery was outstanding. And so I would tell you, as a participant, I absorbed everything that you had to say. And then I just have a couple of comments. I think Paul's notes on the metrics of this, if we're able to save $10,000, to put that in perspective, is in the last 5 years, we have reduced our landfill or transfer station expense by 50%. So we've reduced that in the last 5 years by $50,000. It now sits at $75,000. If we can reduce that another 10,000, that's a percentage which is noteworthy. My kind of question is that figure real? And do we believe, and this is to Paul, do we believe that that is achievable? That's one question. But the next follow-up to that is, I know you've networked with Steve McNally on this for our neighbor in Minerva.
Yep.
And they're hot on this idea. I don't know what the networking has been done with Long Lake or our other neighbors, but from a 5 towns or regional perspective, is there even a bigger initiative that we can employ here in order to make the water rise for all the boats?
Yep.
And benefit from that?
So the two things. One, the conversation on the numbers. What I'm offering is informed by Steve. So Steve's paying $87.50 a ton for haulage. And he told me that his calculation based on their waste removal was about, I think it was about 9,000, just about 9,000 a year is what he calculated by running 40% on his total fees at $87.50 a ton. I'm assuming since we're in the same deal that we're also paying.
We are.
Yeah, $87.50 a ton. So I went with his 9,000. I think we have a little more movement through our transfer station, so I bumped it to 10 to round it up. But that number is something that I have challenged the students to ground truth. Part of their research that they're going to be doing starting in January is to run that number to ground for Newcomb. In terms of networking, absolutely my vision. Steve, I've been trying to move this forward for about 2 years. Steve has, on a municipal level, has gotten out in front of us, which is great. I did not see Minerva linking to Newcomb just because of the hill and the 19 miles. I have always envisioned Long Lake partnering with us. They've got restaurants. If we build the system, they'll come to us. I'm sure of it. And one of the things that I want to highlight is that, again, in this feasibility study that the students are going to work on, is whether we create a pickup model, whether we create a drop-off model, whether we create a hybrid model. We need to explore what works best for us. And, Hildegard put a note in the chat, what about bears? This all comes down to facility design. So if you have an open windrow system, windrow is like when the windrow system, for those of you who are not familiar with organic recycling or composting facility design, you can have open fields where you actually put the stuff out in long mounds, windrows, and then you rotate that on a periodic basis. Or you can have internal with digesters, and digesters is like giant drums that rotate slowly like a backyard composting drum that you turn by hand. So the mechanics and the structure and the design are things that we'll need to work out what makes sense for the town of Newcomb based on temperature, sun, bears, foxes, coyotes, everything else. So those are all questions we need to address.
And I would add to the bears thing too. If you design your facility to the best up front, you don't want the bears learning that it's a food source. And one of the ways you can do that is making sure that you have, it's basically, we call it a compost blanket, but you can cover your pile with food scraps in it and make sure that it has a thick layer of either usually finished compost over top. And so that really senses out any of the smells that would be coming off the pile, and then bears aren't attracted to it. So that's all, like you said, part of the facility design.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add too that we were thinking about in trying to in trying to conceive of this as a holistic approach to how we can maximize resources, one of the other things that you can utilize in composting, and again, this is going to come down to design, so I'm not putting this out there as an absolute solution, but you can use wood chips to mix into the compost as a mechanism for absorbing moisture and managing smell. We have a little bit of wood chips around here, and we have some people who produce wood chips around here. So that's certainly something that we could partner with some of our local businesses in order to get a steady supply of wood chips. And again, which would help manage the bear population, would help us maintain costs and efficiency in our production of compost. Wes, before I call on you, other questions? Do you have other people in the conversation? Mary, Barbara, Lynn, Hildegard? All right, Wes, go for it.
Yeah, I just, this is one topic, but it always interrelates to a larger agenda. And that is communication and collaboration across the region. And so if we're able to rope in our neighbors in order to buy into this concept, it deals around the center of the conversation, but the larger picture is we're communicating with them on another level, which we haven't done historically, and that is only good.
Yeah. I intend, once the project gets started, I introduced it at the town board just very briefly Tuesday night. Once the students get started in January, I plan on going and sitting down with Clay Arsenault and Long Lake. The students know, I've had the students incorporate into their plan that we would do some pickup in restaurant, do some pickup in Long Lake, and that they're going to need to reach out to restaurants in Long Lake and find out their willingness to be engaged. So that project and that process will start in January. The outreach, Wes, that you're talking about, at least to Long Lake.
And once again, we could take our civic organizations and weld this into the influence.
Yep.
If we have, restaurateurs in Long Lake that are not necessarily disposed to this program, they're also a member of our Lions Club.
Yep.
And so we can talk, through the agenda of the Lions Club and community support to maybe weigh them over to the right side.
I think, and this is a conversation for all of us. I'm reflecting, Wes, on your comment. I think conceptually, everyone is going to be very excited about it. I think process-wise is where we're going to hit the hurdles. So, when you go into a restaurant and say, hey, we want to reduce your food scrap waste, that's going to save us hauling fees at the dump, they're going to say, that's great. But then when you say, and to do this, we need your dishwasher to be separating organics at the dish pit, and you need to get a second garbage can in here. A lot of restaurants might say, oh boy, that's, new training. That's, we already have a cramped kitchen. Where am I going to put another garbage can? What am I going to do with all these smelly bags? So it's really the adoption and the process part that I think is going to be most challenging. I think we can get the restaurants to sign up, and I think we can be willing. I think we can organize a pickup run. I'm actually looking at getting a truck here at the Newcomb campus, an ESF compost pickup truck to drive around and pick up stuff, literally. So we're looking at processes to lower the threshold, but there are going to be barriers we have to address. Hildegard, thank you for being patient.
So why don't we, reach out to the restaurants in advance and say, so what would make this easy for you?
That's what the students are going to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I will say something that we've learned is, you just need one restaurant to be the leader, because restaurants usually talk. And, once they see that one restaurant can do it, they're like, oh, I can do that in my kitchen. They're making it work. So we have seen that once you can get a leader, that a lot of the other ones will start tacking on behind that.
That's great. Lynn, did you have something?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Sorry. All right. Other questions, comments? So, Christine, I was going to ask if you would, could you share, if you have some, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, Could you share some experiences that DEC is having with smaller communities that are looking at this? It feels to me like a lot of larger communities are looking mid-sized, but maybe not some of the smaller ones. And what have you been seeing, and what recommendations might you have for us as we go forward?
Yeah, I think, I guess I would start with a recommendation. I think that it is always best to start small. The one downside with food scraps is that, unlike yard waste, food scraps tends to be quite a bit, has an odor to it, you know, as it's breaking down. So you don't want to get in over your head. So it's really best to start small and kind of work your way up and really think through all the logistics, which it seems like you are. I think that tends to be where smaller facilities can get into trouble. Yeah, just really thinking through all the logistics. Yeah, and with that, I think the other recommendation I would have too, which I think you're thinking about, is, you know, once you have your compost, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to give it away free to residents? Are you going to sell it? You know, who is your market and where is it going to move to? That's another thing is, you know, sometimes we can see that facilities will have a buildup of finished compost, which is, you know, worth a lot of money. You put a lot of time into making it and it has a lot of value, and you don't want to see it just sit there. So you want to make sure that all of your, you know who your market is, you know where the outputs are going to be. And also adjusting, being more up in the North Country, making sure that you have your browns, so whether that be your wood chips or your leaves, because you want to keep that pile hot, you know, all winter long. And I know that it tends to be, you know, colder a bit longer up where you are. So just making sure that you have the materials to keep the pile hot and going. Sometimes the smaller facilities, you know, I mean, this happens more with home composting, and you probably won't run into this, but the piles can freeze if they're not warm enough. So just making sure that you have enough of your materials to bring you through the winter time when things might get a little bit slower, or maybe deciding that you're going to shut down in the winter time. And then, you know, maybe only operate from spring to fall time. Those are important things to consider. What else? Smaller communities. Oh, there's questions. Yeah.
Oh, I was
Thank
going to
you.
ask you, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was
I
saying,
was going to ask you what kind of bin do you put it in at home? You know, if people were asking that question, like, what would we say?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ones that you can do. There's some people honestly make them just out of chicken wire. That's one style. There's also, you can make it out of wood pallets. There's also bins that you can buy that are produced, and those are typically made out of plastic. And those, that way they're all enclosed. I'm not sure how they hold up with bears. You probably have to look at the different types of bins that are
Yeah,
out there.
I was thinking in terms of when you're bringing it to the facility.
Oh,
What-
to the facility.
yeah,
like- yeah.
Yeah, but
Yep,
the
so-
other, yeah.
Yeah, so there's various types of totes that you can buy in different sizes.
Okay.
And a lot of them now come with lids that can latch on top, so they can't be pulled open by an animal or the wind or anything like that. But yeah, usually you just, you know, maybe keep one or two bins. This is actually something I learned from one of the food drop-off spots, is don't leave 10 bins out if you don't think you're going to fill 10 bins, because people tend to just choose a bin and put it in there. And why have 8 bins that are partially full when you could have 2 bins that are half full?
Yeah.
And those are some of the site logistics that you just think through of, you know, if you were a person using the site, how would you move around the site?
and an alternate model on that. So that's one model. And again, all of this, we're going to need to work through all of these different models, and that's what we've challenged the students to do. But so that's a drop-off model, Lynn, where you'd have a bin
Right.
somewhere. It's maybe at the dump. Everyone comes and they dump their food scraps into that bin. An alternative model is that everyone has their own 5-gallon pail. We have a storage building that you can get into, like the Put and Take, and everyone can put their 5-gallon pail in there each week and take a fresh pail from their home.
Ah,
Then you have,
yeah.
it's basically an exchange. It's like your milk bottles, or, you know, from when you were a kid. So those are 2 different models that you can have. So, and the benefit of that model is you just leave your 5-gallon pail or your 3-gallon pail or whatever it looks like. You just leave it and you take a brand new clean one. So residents aren't responsible for cleaning their own bucket. And to some degree, you know, I personally am inclined to think that that's going to help lower the threshold for residential adoption. If we make people collect a bucket, take it home, clean your bucket, put it out, fill it up, people are going to get tired of that. They're not going to want to clean their own bucket. But again,
Or they won't, yeah.
yeah, we got to figure out what the best model is.
And I think the bin swap is what Blue Line Compost does. They work with, I think, like a hardware store, a cafe, and basically people can come, leave their food scraps bucket, and then pick up a new bucket.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, there's lots of different models, and we want to
Mhm.
figure out what makes the most sense for Newcomb. Debbie.
Okay, so a municipality decides that they want to be a hub. They want to institute composting, municipality-wide composting. So how long does it take from conception to actually getting this up and running?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it depends on really the scale of the facility that you're building. I would say at least a couple years. I mean, just depending on if you have to. So basically, if you're going to be registered by DEC, you know, you might have to get a registration, you might have to get a permit, and you also have to check with any local laws, you know, and any registrations or permits you have to get through them. So I'd probably account for a couple of years, just because sometimes you can have issues with local laws. So yeah, I would say a couple of years. But maybe Paul, you would know a better answer to that.
No, I think that's right. I mean, there's a number of things again that we have to think about. So the turnaround time that you're asking about, Debbie, works on a couple different levels. So one level is how long would it take us to actually build the facility? I think that could go pretty fast if we set our minds to it. How long would it take to get a critical mass of individuals in the community to embrace and be contributing? I don't know. That's a great question. You know, how long would it take to get restaurants to be contributing? How long would it take to make sure that we had a stable and regular food scrap feedstock? These are all things that work on different timelines. So I think that's what, Christine, when you say, you know, a couple of years, I think that's realistic, because I think if we built this, the timeline that we're working on is April, the students are going to deliver a feasibility study and recommendations to the town of Newcomb. I am hopeful that that document will serve as a blueprint for the town board to think about how they want to go forward. And if they want to go forward, that will give us the summer, June, July, August, to prepare a proposal that then might be submitted in some of the fall granting cycles. And we might be able to receive funding within 2021 to start building a facility in 2022, right? So that's 12 months right there. Beth, hang on one second. So I gotcha. Hang on. So that's just to get the funding to build it. And then we have to roll out education. We have to roll out, you know, again, get people to buy in, and then get the material in here and start producing the material. So I think 24 months is a pretty realistic timeline just to really start.
And depending on, you know, what your bandwidth is and who's working on the project, that, you know, the outreach can start happening while the facility is being built or developed. But, you know, it really depends on, you know, how many people are putting their hours into it, and, you know, when that outreach phase really starts. And
one thing that I want to share here, again, I haven't had an opportunity with this group to share my thinking around this concept. But as I said, I've been thinking about this for a while, and from both college perspectives, from municipal perspectives, from private business perspectives. And I very much see this project going forward as a college and community partnership. So when we talk about getting that education out there, we're already using the students to do the feasibility study. I would love to have 2 or 3 internships throughout the year that would bring college students here to manage the composting facility, or to do some level of the work around it. Also to be doing education. So as we bring in school groups, if we can start bringing in school groups and teaching them about composting, we know, as Christine is an example of, we know that materials management and sustainable materials management is going to be something that is going to be increasingly part of our world going forward, from professional management to facilities management to design, all of these different things. And if the town of Newcomb can be a training center for that, that's perfect in my book.
Perfect.
And so ESF and the town of Newcomb together, I think, can create a pretty powerful partnership. I think we can partner with DEC. That's why Christine's here. So I think we can accomplish a lot as a community looking at innovative partnerships that can, one, lower costs, two, provide additional capacity, three, work to attract activity to Newcomb. That's education, training, workshops, all these kinds of things. And again, differentiate Newcomb from other towns, make this place a destination. All right, Beth, thanks for being patient. What do you got?
All I was gonna say when you were speaking about the outreach is that I think we have a big benefit in that everybody that has to empty their garbage has to go to the dump anyway.
Yep.
You know, so it's not a different stop for anybody, really.
Yep, I think
Yeah,
that's
you're-
right on.
You're kind of capturing everyone.
You're
at one
going
place.
there, yeah,
Yeah.
So it's really just about the 5-gallon pail by the sink.
yeah. And the manpower.
Yeah.
All right, so let's continue. I guess, Christine, one of the things I didn't ask you exactly, and I apologize for not phrasing this well. Do you know we're a town of 450 people. Are you familiar with any other communities in New York or elsewhere at that population scale that are looking at something like this or have done something like this?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think about when you had brought up the question before.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head, but I will put some thought into that.
That's fine. The question works on two levels for me. It works on one level of who can we learn from? And it works on the other level of, again, if no one else is doing this, this is an opportunity for Newcomb.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with you in things that you've said in that people, there's a lot of local governments that are interested in doing this. Actually, whether it be local government or who people are just looking to start their own private business, but they don't know where to start. So if they can turn to a facility that is willing to train them, especially on facility operations, then, you know, they're on the hook and they're all in. It's for a lot of people, it's just, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to, you know, kind of get the ball rolling on stuff. Yeah, I'll put some thought into thinking if there is any other smaller communities doing something like this. Tompkins County, that's at a county level, but they did a lot of work in just building food scraps drop-off spots slowly but surely in different areas around Tompkins County. So they've built their program really slowly over the years, but now it's definitely one of the top ones in the state.
Okay.
Yeah, and even some of the bigger ones, I mean, Ulster County, I think is another gold star in the state. Once again, it's at the county level, but I think there's things that they do that can be replicated at a smaller level, especially with their outreach. They host a lot of workshops. They have a really good relationship with farmers in their community, so they sell out of their compost pretty frequently, actually, which is you know, rather impressive. So
Okay.
even though some of these places are a little bit bigger, I think that there's lessons that can be taken and applied to a smaller community.
All right. Thank you. Debbie, did you have your hand up? Oh, sorry. Debbie, you might have had your hand up, but I'd like to go to Barbara first, please.
Okay.
I heard you say that Delaware County had a program. Interestingly enough, my nephew's down there doing it. And I wondered often, we are compared, Essex County and Delaware County we have a lot of statistics that match. And I'm just wondering, what was Delaware County doing? That would be a model.
So I would actually say Delaware County, it will probably not be able to be replicated in other places just because of their processing facility. But basically what they do is they take in garbage, so everything that's mixed, and it goes through the big drum that rotates, and it's at a pretty hot temperature. So it's hot enough that organics break down. So then when everything comes out of it, the organics have turned to an ash. And then it goes through all these different sifters. The organic ash comes out of it, and they mix that with biosolids, and they compost that all together. So yeah, it's one of the only ones actually in the whole US. that has lasted as long as it has. But yeah, Delaware County just happens to be a really unique scenario. But there might be some other stuff happening at a smaller scale, just not at the county level.
Okay. That's I didn't know. I did not.
Thank you.
Did not realize that's what they were doing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, if you ever get the chance, very interesting tour.
Cool. Debbie, thank you for being patient. What do you got?
No, I was just saying why, maybe our 5-town conglomeration here might be interested in joining, and then it wouldn't be on such a small scale. It would be larger. Maybe the transportation would not be such an issue. We don't know. We haven't approached that yet, but so maybe instead of just thinking of just 400 people in Newcomb, maybe with the outlying towns, they would want to participate in this as well.
But
I think
maybe
there
there are opportunities for public-private partnerships where, we have haulers for commercial compost. Somebody, has that business, and other residential compost is delivered by residents.
Yeah, no, it's
But
absolutely.
that also sounds like part of your student design thing.
Well, yeah, and again, I think that's part of the analysis we want them to give to us. But when we talk about how do we market this town and what do we market about this town, and everyone, we have this ongoing battle where people, I'll be somewhat subjective at this moment, where everyone says you have to have jobs in order to get people to live here, and we've demonstrated that that is not true. Nonetheless, everyone says there has to be jobs to get people to move to Newcomb. This is an opportunity for us to say, as we have discussed in this committee, what are the businesses that we can market that people could start that would draw them to Newcomb? This would be a model.
Yeah. And another thing, I'm betting that there's a lot of retirement knowledge here. And what we could do, and this is like totally not in the context of composting, but sort of in the bigger picture. If you want me to hold off and talk about this later, I will.
Yeah.
But using our retirement skill to help young people start businesses, or to do sort of startups in the community, supported by the knowledge of, people who are older, who don't necessarily want a full-time 9-to-5, but wouldn't be really happy to engage 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week, whenever anybody needs them.
I think that's great.
I
Wes,
just actually want to add something
Please,
to that
Christine.
really quick. So through Cornell Cooperative Extension, some of them host master composter classes. And so basically it's kind of that concept in that they're training these people that are going to be master composters in the community, and then they can go out and, train other people to do their home composting, or maybe start a project at a community garden, or, some other place. But yeah, it's very similar to that concept, and they're trying to train masters in the community and kind of keep that knowledge spreading going on.
So Wes, before I come to you, you did have your pen up, right? Okay, hang on one second. I just want to follow up on that, Christine. When I reached out to Cornell Cooperative in Essex County, I was pretty sure they told me they didn't have any compost stuff going on. Have I crossed a wire on that?
I'm not familiar with Essex. I don't think that they all offer it.
Okay.
But I know that they did have a program in Schenectady, and now they have one in Ulster County. So it's kind of, I would say the composting program is kind of inconsistent between the cooperative extensions, but it could be something that they might get into over the years, and something that I would, push for if there's interest.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I wound up finding that place in Maine, because I called local Cornell, and they're like, and they basically, I'm teasing, but they're like, compost? How do you spell that? What are you talking about? Anyway. Sorry, I'm teasing, but so Wes, you had your pen up.
Just one thing that we need to understand is this trash business isn't something where small towns are at any advantage whatsoever. The only reason that we're able to operate a transfer station in Newcomb is because we have countywide participation from North Elba, Ticonderoga, and Mariah, of which all those towns could run their own trash operation And if they chose to do that, then we would be hard pressed to even find anybody to take the trash out of our community, because it's a volume business and we don't generate enough volume in order to make it viable for any carter to take it out. So, you know, as we like wade into this water, and Christine, with all due respect, you know, you were looking at like one piece to the puzzle, but you know, when we evaluate the entire umbrella here of trash disposal, a town of our size is at a very distinct disadvantage to be able to even get rid of the waste that we have, unless we have other partners participating in the program. That's just a fact. And so I'm just putting that on the table so we understand the landscape that we're dealing with.
Wes, would you be concerned that if Newcomb, well, Long Lake isn't part of the deal. Long Lake hauls their trash, a separate deal, right? So if we reduced, and if Minerva reduces by 40%, do you think at some level that's going to start cutting in noticeably to the overall haulage, and the contract would be in jeopardy for the county? Or do you think that might, or you don't?
I think once again, it's such a small piece to the pie that it would be insignificant and unnoticeable within the scheme of things.
That's good.
I think it would be a distinct benefit to us and our neighbors in order to do that, because our economy of scale is based upon, you know, our landscape.
Yep.
I'm just trying to illustrate the larger perspective of trash hauling. And, you know, as an example, a couple of years ago, when we took glass out of our waste disposal and we put that into recycling, we saved a ton of money, because that's how that's carded, by making that move. You know, as far as the environment is concerned, we probably, you know, had like a neutral effect at best on that, because glass is either recycled or put back into the waste disposal system, depending on what the price of its recycling is. So, you know, from a small town benefit standpoint, yeah, we took glass out. It's a heavyweight item. That did us well on our cartage fee in terms of tonnage. But in terms of the grand scheme of waste disposal, it didn't really do anything.
Okay.
And, you know, my point is always, what does it affect the taxpayer's pocket? And so if we're able to reduce cost and administration in any system, then that's a good thing.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, concerns, reactions, recommendations for next steps? If anybody, by the way, speaking of next steps, if anybody is interested in reading the work plan that the students developed in consultation with me, I'm happy to share that. Hildegard, I don't know if you're saying I have a question, or yes, me, please send that to me. I will be happy to email that to anybody who's interested in it. It's about 8 pages long, so I'm not going to bore everyone to tears with it, but if you want it, let me know. Hildegard, I've got you on the list.
Put me on the list.
Debbie's on the list.
Yeah.
All right, so I think what I might do then, since everybody seems to be excited about it, what I will do is I will ask Lorinda to link it on the double secret extra probation comp plan page. So I'll have it up there on the comp plan page. There will be a section on tonight's presentation. It will have the link to Christine's PowerPoint. It'll have the link to this recording, and it'll have the link to the work plan. All right, other things to ask Christine before we not glom up her entire evening?
Happy to be here.
Well, Christine, I'd like to thank you for putting together the presentation. I'd like to thank you for being here. And I obviously am looking forward to staying in touch with you as we go forward, both through ESF as well as the town of Newcomb. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please keep me informed. I'd love to hear how it goes and be of assistance in any way.
Yeah, right on. All right.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the
Thanks,
rest of your
Christine.
meeting.
Have a great
Thanks.
holiday.
Yeah, you too, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, so moving on, there is a pretty good group of us tonight, but not everybody. Roy and Kirsten are traveling. Other people had other conflicts. So I don't want to get into too rich a discussion on things, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, not least of which is meetings. Mary Lamphere, thank you for your email asking about whether we should meet on Wednesdays or Thursdays. So what I'd like to take a few minutes, before we get into logistics, we've been on the phone for an hour and a half or thereabouts. Do we want to take a quick break? Does anybody need to go to the bathroom, grab a glass of water, coffee, beer, whiskey, champagne? Okay. So I see, Hildegard, you need to leave at 8:30. So I'd like to ask you in particular, since we have 10 minutes, is there anything in particular that you would like to have us discuss or you would like to ask before you get off?
A while ago, I said I can do maps. Tell me what you want me to make. It's coming to
Okay.
the end of the semester. I expect I'm going to have a little bit of time.
Okay.
So, January is your moment.
Okay, so that was one of our homework assignments. So I do want to get to that. Wes, you have your pen up. What do you got?
Yeah, I looked at the homework assignment and in regard to maps, the only thing that I think that needs more clarity and a better visual understanding is our zoning maps.
Okay.
And, in concert with that is, maybe we want to take a look at that and kind of, do an anecdotal assessment of, where our build out possibilities are. And, this ropes into the town land use evaluation and that type of thing. So, I don't know if Hildegard has any relationship to that, but maybe that might be something that she could champion. And so I just put that out on the table as that's the only thing in mapping that I thought needed a little bit of enhancement.
Okay. Hildegard, I see you excited to answer. What I'd like to do, if I could, is collect everybody's map comments quickly and then have you address them all together at once. Beth, what do you got?
I was going to mention just that there's some basic updates that, some land exchanges that have happened since then,
So,
and a couple of trails, the Goodnow
Yep.
trails down there.
so in your comment, Lynn, sorry, I keep calling you Lynn. I'm
Beth.
sorry.
I know I'm on the
It says-
wrong. I'm
it says
on
Lynn
an
it.
iPad that says Lynn.
You can change that, by the way. Anyway, we'll get to that later.
I know.
So Beth, I apologize. So are you saying that there is a particular map in which you think some of the land transfer should be noted? Or are you saying that one of the responsibilities we should have is we need to go through every single one of those maps and update any changes in ownership?
There was a recreation map, and that just needed a couple trails put in there.
Okay, rec map.
Yeah, and it also had it looked like it had a horse trail at the Vic. So I don't know if that used to be horse trail.
Well, if it has the
said a
Vic
foot
on
trail.
it, if it has the Vic on it,
Well,
Beth,
it
it's
didn't
out of
say
date
Vic.
anyway. I know, I'm just
It
busting your
didn't say,
chops.
stop, the AIC.
Yeah. Oh, there. Oh, I know what you're
But
talking
anyway,
about
it looked like an old, it's misleading as well. I mean, it just
Okay.
needs, maybe that's,
So-
they used to have horses there, I don't know.
But so the rec map, okay.
Yeah, there-
And then are there, Mary, Barbara, Mary, Debbie, were there other maps that you guys looked at that you said, oh, this definitely is out of date or this needs to be adjusted?
The trails was the same with me.
Anything else stick out for people? All right.
No, I agree. Just the zoning
Okay.
needs to be updated.
the
Assessed.
zoning maps are online under the county.
It should be.
I don't know if they would be of any use.
I think that's the place to start.
Yeah, because I think the information gets old. In the last 10 years, it might have gotten old in a couple spots.
So Wes and then Hildegard.
Yeah, my comment on the zoning map is to just make it more easily understood and readable.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so
clarity.
if that's able to be replicated off of pictometry or, real
Yeah.
property or whatever. I'm not suggesting that we recreate the wheel. I know that, this is like one of my overriding things over an extended period of time is, okay, we have this property, which, Chasen told us we got to build out analysis of 500 units. That is malarkey as far as I'm concerned. But as that relates to buildable property and land that's available in order to build, what's the zoning requirement for that? So, if it's 8.5 or it's RC1 or, we just ran into this situation with like Jim Miller's property on the Chasen Road. I think we need to have an in-depth understanding as to, like what our, because the hamlet is not going to enlarge. And because the state land has like emasculated our ability to expand the town, we need to have in our comprehensive plan a very understandable action plan as to where we, if somebody wanted to come in and they had a 30-room hotel that they wanted to build in order to complement the Welcome and Historical Center, where would we put that? And where would we recommend that they do that? And I don't think we're in a position to do that. However, understanding the lay of the land might enable us to at least have a clue.
All right. Thank you. Hildegard, go for it.
So actually, there's number one, redoing the zoning map sounds like you're trying to get me in trouble with George. And there's a couple of people I don't want to get in trouble with, and George is one of them. However, there is a crazy fun application that I have access to through my job on ArcGIS, which is called ArcUrban. And what it allows you to do is like sort of imagine what your neighborhood would look like in a range of different contexts. And I haven't touched it because it's just too attractive. It's like one of those like cakes on the cake stand at the Harris Lake Lodge. You just like cover your eyes and walk forward, but it's like it's out there and it's waiting for me. So that would be a really fun thing to undertake with you all. And so maybe I'll put that on my fun thing to do in Newcomb would be to goof around with the solar siting application. But if you want to goof around with the zoning and available property and all that other groupie stuff, let's go. And what I would love to do is like sort of maybe do sort of I'm stupid, I'm running out of juice. Like a crowd, like a community-based planning Zoom, so, hey, what would happen if you push this button? What would happen if you push that button?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the potential for having a gazillion people screaming all at once, all 400 of us, that could happen,
I think what we could do, if I'm listening carefully, Hildegard, to what you're saying and all, to when you're talking about ArcUrban, and also Wes, what you're talking about, we could do some scenario planning to include in the comprehensive plan with 3 or 4 keystone projects. So if we're going to identify a solar field of, let's say, 25 megawatts, a 25 megawatt solar field, a 30-room hotel, a blank business, let's say it's
low-income housing.
Well, so we want to be strategic.
Affordable housing, something like that.
So solar, hotels, say senior housing. Is that what you said, Hildegard?
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing is a good one. Senior living is a good one. And then we could do a 5th one, which would be like an equestrian stable, like as a business, right? So we pick those 5 things that are 5 realistic to assume potential businesses, and then you do some scenario mapping of where would they go, what would be the impacts, what would be the water needs, the power needs, the sewage needs, all that stuff. I think that'd be a very powerful exercise.
That'd be so fun. Okay, so I gotta go. All these things are more than just January, but we can certainly get things underway.
Yeah. I want to ask you a quick question before you go. We have traditionally met on Thursdays in the winter and on Wednesdays in the summer. It shifts back and forth based on golf league. So it's always shifting. It's a moving target.
Don't care.
I just want to ask you, based on your teaching schedule.
I'm teaching during the daytime next semester.
So evenings you're free no matter what. Sweet. All right, great. You're out of here. Thank you for being on the call tonight. Okay. So
Paul, Mary
someone,
Lambert.
oh, yes, Mary. Yeah.
You know, when I came to Newcomb, it seemed like no one really knew what land the town owned and this and that. And I know I shared with you and Wes back in maybe October. I got a report of the town-owned land parcels made in 2016 by Robin Deloria.
Mm-hmm.
It has all has all the parcels,
Yep.
the zonings and all of that kind of stuff. Because I thought the same thing. What if someone came in here and they wanted to develop? Where would that person, and they said something that say to me, where would I send them? What would they know and not know about the town? And I did follow up with Mike Mitchell in Old Forge, who's a developer, and spoke with him. And he basically said, unless your town board, planning board, and zoning board aren't on it together, you could spend hours and hours and hours talking, but that's what needs to happen. So there's a lot of information out there already on zoning and the lands that the town owns. So I'm not sure if people are aware of that, because it always seemed at all different meetings that it was, do we know, don't we know? Do we know, don't we know? And the information's there.
Thank you. I believe the information's in the 2010. Wes is going to go. It's in the comp plan. Robin updated it in
Yeah.
2015. It's been updated now. So I'm just.
I would, all that information is there.
People just need to read it.
Someone, a champion, needs to tie a rope around that information and make a recommendation. And it's been my understanding that somebody has been assigned to do that. I have seen no tangible result from it. Yes, that's all available. It needs to be further identified and a recommendation put forth, period.
Is that
Having the information
Would that
doesn't
be-
make any difference to anybody unless there's a recommendation that's attached to it.
And would that be the comprehensive planning committee that would make that recommendation?
No, that would be the people that are taking a look at the property analysis and making a recommendation for that.
Okay.
And that's a town, hold on one second, Beth. That's a town board action right now. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, but I have seen no evidence to support that.
Thank you. Beth?
So they're gonna look at each piece or the yellow on that map, right? And they're gonna decide, does it have access? What's the zoning? How many houses could you put on it? I mean, is that the level of detail you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And,
instance.
can they get in there? Yeah, is it
It
feasible?
started out with, all right, let's identify the property that we actually own. Okay, so we've done that. And then how does that fall within the current zoning? And so, when you have, like the corner lot next to the risk property on the beach road, and it's 1 acre, what do we want to do with that?
Yeah.
Can somebody make a recommendation as to what they think the best usage of that property is? The 5 acres behind that off of Johnson Road. What would be the best utility in order to accomplish our comprehensive plan objectives? The 350 acres that are bordering the golf course that were, kind of set aside for expansion of the golf course. I would tell you, you'd be a fool to think you'd ever want to put another 9 holes in, given the current economic state of the golf course. But that's an opportunity, if you talk to somebody like Sisti, he would
Oh, yeah.
tell you, I want to get a developer in here and, I want to put in, a cabin complex in order to supplement the current golf course and put a hotel and a conference center in that. There are people that are interested in doing that, but we need to have buy-in from a bigger approach in order to understand what the possibilities are for that land and how they potentially could be utilized.
So Beth, I just want to make one
You
quick
don't-
comment.
Yeah. I was gonna say, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just to Wes's comment
Mhm.
and to someone else, and Mary, to your comment, I'm pretty confident that we have in our recommendations already that there should be a town-wide analysis of available land and a recommendations on highest use. I'm almost positive there's a paragraph on that. Beth, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sure that, the fact of the matter is that we've had that as an objective for a number of years and nothing has come to fruition on it. And we pay people in order to occupy these elected positions that should be grabbing the ball in order to understand this and present it.
No
Period.
comment. No comment. Beth?
I think, first of all, there's probably two sides to the golf course story, whether or not the land should be preserved in case we ever got to the point that we wanted to do something as a town with it. And the other point is that developers are going to come, a developer, and I don't care who it is, ABC developer can come in. They're the ones that are going to benefit from the project. You have to kind of see what the town's going to get out of it too. You don't want to give it away to somebody either. That's just the way I view it.
Yeah, I don't.
The only way that I would see giving anything away to anyone would be in the affordable housing aspect, because of the larger umbrella of underwriting jobs for the regional economy. And that's the illustration from the presentation by John Bartow of, we need truck drivers in order to support the forest products industry. We
Right,
don't have any.
right.
We don't have any
Right.
place for them to live. If Newcomb actually is a central location for truck drivers to live in order to support that industry. We got to come up with some type of recommendation or a plan on how to do that. And
Yeah.
the most critical element of it is, okay, we own a bunch of property. What are we willing to do in order to support this regional and local initiative? And nothing has, in my mind, materialized or come forth in that regard. And that is a critical piece to the entire conversation.
Yeah.
Do you
agreed.
think it's because people want to leave the option open to have the land as a municipal?
No, I think nobody's
Asset?
grabbed the baton and figured out how to move
Okay.
this conversation
Okay.
forward,
Agreed.
period.
Okay.
Agreed. 100%.
It's like you've got this complement of people that go, we need jobs in Newcomb, but they don't want to, and you have the variables within your reach in order to at least provide some minimal solution to it, and they choose to do nothing.
Well, one thing I was going to say about Matt is he has 250 acres of land that is buildable.
And he's very,
if you want to use him as an example, he could do that, I think, on his land.
he is more than willing to do that, and he's exploring putting power in there right now.
Yeah, that's great.
These are all conversations that I think are valuable and rich, but I think they're at a level of detail that need to happen when there is an active effort to align available land with potential development opportunities. And I think our responsibility at the moment is to make recommendations for what the town should be doing. I believe that recommendation, I'll go back and I'll review it. I'll encourage all of you to look at the latest copy of the recommendations document and see if the conversation that we're having right now tonight is reflected in the recommendations that we've made. And if it's not, I will add it. But I certainly think if the town board is supposed to be working on this and they're not, or haven't been able to make progress, certainly think we can make a recommendation to encourage them to redouble their efforts.
Maybe they need help.
I think that I think that recommendation is part of our active, recommendation plan. It was my belief that this was going to move forward prior to that recommendation. And, we'll just continue to have this be a piece to the comprehensive plan. the fact of the matter is this is a here and now thing. As Mary mentioned, the initial research has been done behind this. This is something that could move forward last year or the year before, and it hasn't because no one has either embraced this or championed it in order to, maybe they don't understand it, but this
Maybe
is
they don't
something
want to?
this is something that is not only within reach, it can also be a long-term
Yeah.
as well.
And I think Hildegard said, you know, in her excitement of playing with the computer modeling, she actually may be able to advance a bunch of this in a different way. So, okay. All right. So let's shift gears for a moment and talk about, we're at 8:40. Let's talk about when we want to start meeting. We're obviously, the next meeting we have is going to be in 2021. So how do we want to look at the most effective way for us to get together? Our timeline is still that we're going to try and have a document completed in the middle of the year. So take about another 6 months, hopefully, and get done what we need to get done. I think within that, we want to continue to meet twice a month. So that's only another 12 meetings. They go fast. So 12 meetings now through June, and 2 a month. That would make, if we keep the same general timing, that would make our January meetings on Thursday the 14th and Thursday the 28th. So at least those weeks, let's say the week of January 11th and the week of January 25th. And the question is, what nights do we want to meet? And I know there's a range of valid reasons to look at all different nights. We try and avoid Tuesdays because there are town board meetings. We try and avoid Wednesdays because they're Lions Club. But you know, obviously Fridays are bad. So that kind of leaves us Monday, Thursday. I mean, what do people want? Excuse me, what do people want to do? And the key is to come up with a date that's as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. Wes, I see your hand first.
Could I offer, you know, one of the things that we want to do individually, if not collectively, is to support our local businesses. And like tonight, we're missing trivia night at the lodge, which is, you know, an opportunity not only for social interaction, but also for a little business for one of our restaurants.
Yeah.
And so I would just offer, if we went to Wednesday night, you know, because trivia is on Thursday. If we went to Wednesday night and we did it off cycle from Lions, so we'd be looking at like the 6th of January and then the 20th, you know, providing we're even going to be able to get enough Lions to have a meeting to be able to do it at the lodge for 20 people. That's a real question mark. But just to like plan that off cycle from that potential event, it wouldn't interact with trivia, and it would, you know, potentially not interact with Lions either.
What night is Golf League?
Golf League's on Thursday night, but that won't start until May.
Okay. So if we do Wednesdays, we can run, in theory, straight into summer on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
How do people feel about that?
Fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Mary and Barbara?
It's okay.
I'm fine, but Wes, there may be a change in trivia night.
And if that's the case, I'm not aware of that.
No, just some talk I've had with Kelly on it. So
Would it go to Wednesday? You mean?
it may go to Wednesday.
Oh,
Yeah, I think in the off season, just to be clear, in the shoulder season, when the restaurant schedule went from 4 nights to 3 nights, trivia shifted from the first night they were open, Wednesdays, to the first night they were open, Thursdays.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just some talk Kelly and I've had, nothing, as far as I know, is set in stone, but there is talk about it, so.
Well,
I always like to be positive about all these things, but I would be hard pressed to believe that opening up on Wednesday night and trivia night being a springboard for that. I'm not in the business, but I don't think that would be the best business decision,
yeah.
because at best you've got, for Lions, she wants 20 people in order to be able to open on Wednesday night. Trivia in itself is 4, 6, 10, maybe 12 people. And to think that she would open for, and tonight, it probably is only about 6 people. I just scratch my head on that one.
Yeah.
It could be
Maybe
an
we should
active-
just look at these months right now and then
Yeah,
go
just
on
look
from
at
there.
what you want to do.
Mary, is it your insight that she's thinking about shifting that before spring, or is that just like, she's talking
We just
April?
we have several things on the table right now, and it may be a possibility. So,
I think
if it's going to interfere, I don't want it to interfere.
well, in the worst case scenario, we are only able to attend 2 trivia nights a month instead of 4. But I think it seems like we've all agreed that Wednesdays in the opposing weeks from Lions Club is reasonable, and we can reassess if we need to. But at the very least, what I heard is consensus around January 6th and around January 20th. And I did not wind up having a chance to sit and write. It's been a weird couple of weeks for me. So I did not get the writing done. So that will give me a goal, because we're looking at 2 weeks from today. So that'll give me a chance to get my writing done.
And, Paul, I think you just said this is, if the landscape changes that they're going to open on Wednesday night, then maybe we go to Thursday night.
Yeah.
And, for the foreseeable future, it's not like we're doing a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're still, kind of sequestered and.
So what I'm going to propose then is for January, I'm going to tell you guys all this, you can write it down. And I'll send it around in an email as well, but January 6th and 20th, February 10th and 24th. That will give us the next 4 meetings, the next 2 months, and then we'll assess appropriately as we hit March.
Perfect.
Sound all right to people?
What was
Perfect.
the February dates again, Paul, please?
10 and 24.
And then 24. Thank you.
All right, so the next thing that we need to put on the agenda, I don't think that there are any presentations that we need to have, but I want to leave it open for people to recommend some. Wes?
The 10th and 24th of February would be the Lions projected meetings.
Good to know. That means that they're the same meetings in March. So let's go, hold on. So we're looking at January, hold on a second here. January 20th.
Yeah.
Hold on. So actually 2 weeks from January 20th would actually be February 3rd and February 17th.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
So 3 and 17, and we may as well just say March 3 and 17 also. And we can plan on having a St. Patrick's Day drunken meeting.
Good.
I'll send those around. So those are 6 dates, 3 months, half of our projected remaining time together. So I do not anticipate any more presentations. I really anticipate trying to get maps done, trying to get the census data, and starting to try and write much more and start building towards the body of our narrative. I think we have a lot in recommendation world, but we need to get the narrative nailed down. So that's really what I think the bulk of the work is going to be over the remaining time. So with that, we got about 10 minutes. Is there anything that people would like to add into the discussion, add into the conversation that we need to be addressing? Is there anything lingering from previous conversations that anybody would like to say, hey, by the way, can we get this on the agenda for more discussion? Wes?
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm not sure what sifted through the why Newcomb. But my understanding is that we got to the elevator pitch, but that needs to be recorded on the working document. And so it would be my request that we move to the 60 word, then the 90 word at the next meeting in order to keep this thought active.
Yeah, so some follow-up on that, Wes. The exercise that I designed there was to get people focused on what they value about Newcomb in order to be able to use that to inform how we create a consistent messaging about Newcomb and how we underscore values that we want to put in our marketing. So it was, and I do think ultimately we want to draw on that whatever we came up with, we can use individually to say, oh yeah, these are the values, and we can phrase whatever things we want. Out of that conversation came the following was sort of the synthesis of values that people had for Newcomb. So first was that it was 4 seasons, that it was a community with heart and passion, that it was welcoming, that it was tranquil, peaceful, and safe, that it was a classic community with contemporary amenities. That's more of a marketing phrase of mine, but that was the synthesis of what we discussed. We also had a concept around it not being remote, which I'm digested into remote, but not isolated. Other values were natural beauty, recreational opportunity, it's safe, that was discussed up above as well with tranquility, that it's wildness, that it's a learning community, or a community that values learning would be the way to phrase that. That it is a community that values history, values education, a community that is caring, and it's caring about others, about community, about neighbors. It is a community that's healthy, it values health, it values family and neighbors, it values respecting your privacy, and it values respect and pride. So that's what those are the digested values out of that exercise, and the distillation of the sort of a common 90, 60, 30. We can work on that, and I'll put up those distilled values. That list, I need to type that list and get it up. I did not have time. I did not make the time, excuse me. We always have time. We can all sleep last. I didn't make the time to write that up and get it on the sheet. Get it on the site.
You're doing a champion's job here, and never make comments like that, because everything that you do is so sincerely appreciated by everybody on the Zoom. And then hopefully more in the background, that you should actually take a rest for a couple weeks.
That's what the eggnog and whiskey is for. Anyway, all right. We are rounding the bases towards home. Other things that we want to make sure we don't lose sight of. And by the way, Wes, thank you for bringing that up. So that's the perfect example. Things we don't want to lose sight of. Mary, Beth, Debbie, Barbara. Okay. My goal will be for, we talked about, I think it's January 6th, right? My goal is January 6th. I will have some recommendations that we have written up. I will have the distilled values written up, and continue to move things forward.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
I anticipate seeing most of you at some point around town, but if for any reason I don't see you in the next week, I hope everybody has safe and healthy and happy holidays, and I will look forward to telling you the same in person when I see you.
You too.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thanks.
Thank you.